the first person to make $1 million as an executive in the world was a man named Charles Schwab back in the early 1900s. And he came up with the idea. He worked for Carnegie for a while, the steel magnate, Andrew Carnegie, and he came up with the idea to do a roll up. And so he went to people like J.P. Morgan and other millionaires, with what would be billionaires of today. And he bought a lot of little steel companies, rolled them up, and he built Bethlehem Steel. And he was running Bethlehem, making $1 million a year, and brought in the consultant of the day, Ivy Lee of Lee and Associates. And back then we didn't have terms like strategy, but rather they were called PR firms, because business was such an evil concept to the world because it was growing so fast in this, young nation of the United States of America. So that was part of what Ivy did. But Ivy also was a management consultant. And he would follow around the CEO, new CEO client for a week or two, just shadow him the complete week, and or two. Usually it was a couple of weeks. But after 2 days, he's being dropped off at the hotel, and he leans in and tells Charles, he says, "Hey, Charlie, tomorrow I'm just going to meet you at the office. I'll see you there at 7 o'clock. And I'm going to wrap up the engagement tomorrow. We're finished here. Talk to you then." And Schwab was beside himself. He had told his board of directors, "We're bringing in the big league guys. We're bringing in the consultants of the day, the McKinsey of the day. And it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars we spend on this. Oh my gosh, that's the biggest for consulting." And so he was embarrassed, couldn't sleep. He goes in, he's beside himself. Ivy Lee walks in, and he sits down. He says, "Okay, you ready?" And Charles said, "So this is really it?" He says, "Yep." "You got a pen and paper?" "Yep." "Okay. Number one, every day before you leave the office, you're going to make a list of the 6 most important things you need to do tomorrow. Number two," he throws down his pen. He's like, "Wait a second. You mean to," he says, "just humor me. Let's finish this and then you can berate me or whatever. I don't care. Number two, you're going to number that list of 6 items in order of priority. Number three, you're going to come in the next day and you're going to start with number 1. And when you're finished, you'll go to number 2. And if a fire literally comes up or figuratively comes up, go put it out and come right back to where you stopped, and get back to the list in order of priority." And so he throws down his pen again. He says, "Fine. What do you expect me to pay you for this?" And Ivy Lee got up and said, "Nothing yet. Do it for 28 days and send me a check for whatever you think it's worth." And he turned around and he walked out. And Schwab was so upset. He only had one thing he could do, to do it for 28 days. Because he couldn't tell anybody he just got fired by the consultant. He did it for 28 days. In fact, on the 28th day, he sent a check for $28,000, which is $660,000 in today's dollars, to Ivy Lee, just for that first step of the process. Because eventually he said, "I want you to come back and teach everybody the same thing. And then we can begin getting into what we would call strategy stuff now, and other management growth oriented items." And by the way, they went from being a Fortune 50 to the largest company in the world, publicly held company in the world. Now, here's the point, is before you get to all this strategy stuff, you got to have a way of taking it down to day-to-day action. And if you do that one thing, and I know this for a fact because I've actually trained people just on priority management. There you go. I love it.
This was my list. I do it the night before.
Well, for everybody listening.
And all this is new page every day.
Yeah. So if you do that one thing, the research shows, it used to be reported in the Wall Street Journal at New Year's every year, you can increase your daily productivity and get 63 minutes of more stuff done every day with that short little plan. And you'll get
an extra hour?
A whole extra hour without working an extra hour, and you'll be less stressed. I've had clients tell me they sleep better at night. You'll spend less money. You'll have less FedEx packages going out, things like that, less missed deadlines, less, lost pieces of business, whatever. But the most important thing is that you get the most important things done first, which makes you more successful. And this was the whole point of Stephen Covey's research into quadrant 2 time management. It's the non-urgent, high priority items that get procrastinated upon too much is the greatest limiting factor to success. And so it's not just a definition of success, it's an application and implementation, because it's not just about strategy, it's about implementation. And that's what the objectives really are for a company, is they are the implementation items. But then it ultimately comes down to us as individuals. What should I be working on now? And that's the question you must always ask. In fact, again, Drucker came up with the term time management. Now Alan Lakin ran with it. But that's where the rubber meets the road. You can formulate the greatest strategy, but without implementation, you have nothing. So everybody out there, do that for 28 days and then send me a check for whatever you think it's worth.
Do I get a commission fee since I'm the
Yes, you
beginner?
do.